If you are under contract for buying or selling a home, congratulations, but you're not done yet. As long as the key is yours or the money is in your pocket, there are a million things could go wrong to make this transaction miserable or even kill the deal.
I've had clients on a $2.5 million deal almost walk away from the closing table based on $1,000 credit for a dishwasher not working.
What? Fight for a dishwasher for over $2 million purchase. That's crazy. What's even more crazier,
I've never seen a fight at a closing table. I've actually heard a lot of stories about people physically fighting at closing tables based on disagreements.
what? So let's go to talk to a lawyer to see what else we should be expecting during the closing process. I had a chance to sit down with Milan Reyngch, a real estate attorney, to talk about the closing process and how much does it cost to close on a house. Real estate attorney is a key role in this process. From the moment you sign the contract to the moment you receive the key, your attorney is the one reviewing documents, handling dispute between parties, and guiding you through the legal process. By law in many states, attorney must be present at the closing table, especially in New York. All real estate contract of sale need to be drawn up by the principal or their attorney. Every party in the transaction needs attorney.
So the main parties at a closing are the buyer, seller, bank attorney, and the title company.
I remember when I was in college, in law class, one of my professors said, in Manhattan alone, there are more lawyers than Japan, the whole country combined. Everyone is trying to sue someone else for something. I totally get it. Just look at how busy a real estate attorney can be. How many closings you have per day normally?
The most I've ever done by myself is 6 closings in one day.
How many cases you're dealing with right now?
How many deals?
Uh-huh.
Maybe 70, 80 deals.
Right now at the same time?
Yes.
Oh my God.
And that's without contract. I have another 20, 25 pending.
Approximately how many cases
I
you're
would
dealing
say-
with a year?
A year? In total with representation in bank, I would say maybe 300.
Holy shit. Are you ever asleep?
Do I ever sleep? I'll sleep when I retire.
Workaholic, 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 workaholic. Time to get to work. Workaholic, workaholic, workaholic.
So at this point, you're under contract. You had already gone through a massive search of your dream home and hired a real estate professional and gotten loan from a loan officer. If you are not, I have another video with the loan officer, Michael Goldberg from Freedom Mortgage. He will be talking about everything you need to know for getting a mortgage and step by step how to apply. So what is the closing?
Each party, obviously the buyer brings the cash, the seller brings the keys. They exchange cash for keys, and that's essentially a closing in a nutshell, right?
If it's that simple, why do we need an attorney? There are many issues could arise during the process.
Clearance of judgments, violations, sign-offs for permits, bank clearance, some kind of pandemic maybe, things that are out of our control, force majeure, acts of God. For the most part, it's typically bank clearance. Once a bank clearance comes in, parties typically close shortly thereafter.
And in many states, attorney representation is required for the transaction. And also for the biggest purchase of your life, you want to get all the help that you can. Before we talk about money, let's take a break.
The table is clean, that's important.
Video is more.
How are you?
There are many costs involved at the closing for both buyer and seller. So let's look at the buyer first.
When it comes to the closing costs for the buyer, it's determined based on whether they're financing or they're not financing. If they're not financing, then the majority of their closing costs are the title fees.
Financing, you mean either
Get a
cash or
mortgage.
take a mortgage?
Yes.
Oh, gotcha. So if they financing, which means if they take a mortgage?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes. If they are purchasing with financing, then the majority of their closing costs is the mortgage recording tax, which is based on the loan amount. Obviously, they still pay the title fees and the recording fees. When it comes to a house purchase, I would say the closing costs should be around 3% of the purchase price, 3.5%. with the bank fees. Yes.
So 3% of
3.5%,
the
yeah.
purchasing price of
Yes.
the house.
Yes.
That's approximately, that's everything combined together.
Yes,
is
give or
3%.
take, it's a range. Yes.
Okay, that's for a buyer.
For the buyer, yes. Remember, if you're purchasing over $1 million, the mansion tax applies also.
How does that work?
That increases your purchase price, yes.
Yeah, how does that work?
How does that work? Anything over $1 million, you pay 1% of the purchase price, and then as the tiers go up, you pay a higher percentage per quarter. All cash closings, as my wonderful client Irene Wang, part of Sunny Home Property Solutions, she likes to do what we call all cash transactions. What that means is cash for keys. How long does an all cash transaction typically take? 15-20 minutes. Essentially, the seller prepares the deed and the transfer documents, buyer comes, ensures that the deed is properly created, properly formulated, and then they sign the transfer documents. The seller's attorney makes sure that they receive the proper money, and the closing is concluded. I would say all cash transaction. Obviously, you have to order the title report, make sure you're getting marketable title, no title issues. I would say it could take anywhere between, if everything goes smoothly, which, you know, in this world, it doesn't always happen. I would say anywhere between a general range would be a week to 3 to 4 weeks. Up until a month, if everything goes smoothly. Obviously, if there's a delay from the seller side, then you're going to be delayed.
Are you confused? Good, because I am. So let's recap. So what about the closing costs for seller?
So when it comes to a house, the major closing costs for the seller are the transfer taxes. Okay, New York City, New York State, depends on the sale price. That determines the percentage of the transfer taxes. The purchase price is over $500,000. They pay 1.825% of the sale price. That's New York City and New York State. 1.425 New York City, 0.4 New York State.
And broker fee, if they have.
Broker fee, I mean, that depends on what you negotiate with your broker, but it could range anywhere between 3 to 6% of the sale price. So if your sale price is below $500,000, you pay 1.4% transfer tax, meaning 1% New York City, 0.4% New York State.
So for the seller is transfer tax,
Yeah.
broker fee.
Yes.
And what else fees?
That's mainly it. And for the buyer, it's the title fees, the recording fees, the bank fees. Title company ensures that you're getting marketable title. They make sure all the liens judgments are cleared and that there are no encumbrances against the property. And the bank attorney just facilitates the bank documents and ensures that the bank's interest in the transaction is secured. The survey just the survey reading outlines the boundaries of the property, and it ensures that the neighboring properties have no encroachments onto your property in order to prevent any potential adverse possessions, or out of possessions, actually, yeah. Yeah, okay, so escrow, there are a couple of situations where you have escrow. The major situation is the final water reading. When the seller typically doesn't provide the final water reading at closing, you typically do an escrow agreement to protect the buyer's interest in the property, meaning that the buyer shouldn't be held responsible for the seller's final water fees up until the date of closing. Other situations of escrow could be some kind of repair given the final walkthrough. It could be some kind of lien or judgment that hasn't been cleared at closing, so the seller's attorney or the title company will hold escrow back pending the clearance from the seller side. Items of those nature, yep. From time of contract to time of closing, it's typically anywhere between 60 to 90 days from the time of fully executed contract up until closing. Contingent on everything going smoothly, of course, but in this world, for the most part, it doesn't.
So what's the longest closing you have ever encountered?
I've had a deal, new development condo, pending for 1.5 years. because the bank will not issue the final clearance to close without the temporary certificate of occupancy or the CO, and the condo declaration being on record and recorded. So dry closing sometimes happen. What that means is dry closing is when the parties exchange cash for keys, but they don't physically exchange it because there's some kind of issue that came to fruition. It could be that the seller didn't receive the wire transfer in time. It could be that the seller pre-signed documents, the seller's not physically at the closing, so they're waiting for the funds to hit the seller attorney's escrow before they officially conclude the closing. So typically what happens is you go to the closing table, seller pre-signs docs, sends it to the closing. The buyer, bank, and title company are present at the closing table. Buyer takes care of the bank documents, title documents, and whatever ancillary documents they need to take care of. And they send the wire from their own wire from the buyer and the bank's wire from the loan proceeds. Once they hit the seller attorney's escrow, that's when we're officially concluded. It could occur on the next day. So what happens is it's called the dry closing. The title company holds the deed and holds everything in escrow until the seller's attorney confirms that they have received the money and the closing has concluded. I would say the hardest deals that I have experienced were the COVID-19 deals when the pandemic first started, because a lot of banks were not clearing the loan to close because maybe people lost their jobs, their financials were disrupted, so it was a big issue because attorneys had to figure out what's going on with the contract, because some sellers would not let you out of the contract. Plus, remember, the COVID-19 pandemic provision that we have now, it was not in the contract before the pandemic started. So we kind of had to figure out a way amongst attorneys to help our clients either facilitate the deal or be able to opt out of the contract and get the deposit back. I would say usually, for the most part, deals can be difficult at times. It all depends on the team that you have working around you, your broker, your mortgage loan officer, your attorney. I would say the most difficult part of deals at times is when the final walkthrough, there are items at the final walkthrough. When there are issues that come up at the final walkthrough, whether it's a leak, some kind of damage or something, the attorneys usually have to handle that at the closing.
I hope this video can help you for your upcoming closing. If you have more questions, comment below. And also, I have a Milan Reyngch's contact information in the description. So, good luck and see you next video.